eating too much causes hair loss and heating it causes cancer. Just how maligned is MSG? The ingredient defeated by fears of over-processing. Back in the day, MSG was a staple flavor enhancer in almost every household. But at some point, it suddenly became seen as a harmful villain. It is no exaggeration to say that over the past decade, most Chinese families have been terrified of MSG, which not only drove Lianhua MSG to the brink of bankruptcy, but also caused the entire industry to suffer severe damage. However, we can't pin all the blame on the consumers. Just look at its appearance uniform, granules, thin and long, and here its name, monosodium glutamate. It looks just like some chemical product created through industrial processing. It wasn't until recent years, as public awareness improved, that MSG slowly began to shake off its stigma. Yet, the root of all these rumors actually began with a targeted campaign against Chinese food and MSG companies. Hello, everyone, this is Kanchai. Today we're putting MSG in the spotlight. It's time for our monthly public execution. Guys, please help me out with a vote. Thank you so much. Okay, back to the topic. This is a bottle of MSG and chicken essence. If you've ever read the ingredient list carefully, you'd find that while MSG is 99 monosodium glutamate, chicken essence also contains about 40 MSG. They're both products designed for flavor enhancement, so let's stop comparing which is healthier. Moreover, while monosodium glutamate sounds very high-tech, in reality it was discovered in 1908 by a Japanese professor, Kikunone Ikeda, who extracted it from kombu, making it a perfectly natural substance. Since then, MSG has been widely accepted and popularized among Asians. Even Europe and the US began to embrace this unique flavor. Especially during World War II, many US officers stationed in the Pacific Theater discovered that soldiers preferred the taste of Japanese rations over other foods. After some research, the US military followed suit, and MSG made its way boldly into field rations and canned goods. In the civilian market, whether in Chinese restaurants or in the soups made by Western housewives, MSG became an indispensable seasoning. Thus, by the mid-20th century, MSG had reached its heyday. Not only did the famous Buddha's hand brand emerge in old Shanghai, but local MSG brands like Woijia also appeared in the United States. However, with the appearance of a questionable letter, the status of MSG began to take a sharp turn for the worse. In 1968, the New England Journal of Medicine published a letter to the editor, submitted by a Chinese-American doctor, Robert Holman Cook. The letter described that after every meal at Chinese restaurants in the US would experience symptoms like numbness in the upper limbs, rapid heartbeat, and headaches. He ultimately pointed the finger at MSG, sparking widespread panic. In 1970, the US Food and Drug Administration commissioned the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology to evaluate the safety of MSG. But the result was that normal consumption poses no danger. However, the prevailing discrimination and suspicion against the Chinese at the time made the claims in this letter far more acceptable to Westerners than the actual facts. Despite decades of subsequent tests proving it to be safe, MSG continued to be stigmatized. More people claimed that after eating Chinese food, they experienced symptoms like fever and chest pain. This unfounded ailment believed to be caused by MSG. It was even stigmatized by the Chinese restaurant syndrome. Meanwhile, people in China started becoming wary of MSG as well. A widely circulated claim is that when cooked at a constant high temperature of 120 degrees C, MSG converts from sodium glutamate into carcinogenic sodium pyroglutamate. What exactly is sodium glutamate? This is a bottle of soy sauce. Many people like to add a splash of soy sauce when stir-frying to enhance color and umami, which contains 16,4-53 1 milligrams of sodium glutamate per milliliter, which is the source of soy sauce's umami. Once in soup, it dissociates into glutamate and sodium ions. The boiling point of water-based cooking is about 100 degrees Celsius, and it's hard for the overall temperature in the pan to exceed that for long. Even if you stir-fry until it burns, you only get a tiny amount of charred byproducts. So even if you don't use MSG, sodium glutamate is still all around us. Various flavor enhancers like chicken, bouillon, soy sauce, oyster sauce, and abalone sauce often contain added sodium glutamate. So while sodium glutamate may sound like processed food chemicals, it is actually just a common amino acid salt found in nature, and there is no evidence that it is carcinogenic. Looking back at our collective memory, China began a widespread boycott of MSG, which nearly caused the Lotus brand of MSG to be delisted starting around 10 years ago. The impact of these rumors was so great that even now, with MSG vindicated, we still can't erase its sinister image from the minds of the older generation, besides being seen as processed food chemicals. ingredients. There's another argument about MSG that is also gaining traction. MSG ruined Chinese cuisine. We often see in the comment sections of videos featuring greasy, spicy, or seafood dishes comments like, "This sauce would taste good even on the sole of a shoe." Some call it a travesty, arguing it destroys the natural flavors and essence of the ingredients. And MSG is often burdened with the exact same accusation. This criticism doesn't just come from within China, it also comes from some in the West. Yet what most people in Europe and the US don't realize is that MSG is not exclusive to Chinese cuisine. Chips, salad dressings, and frozen foods. The use of MSG is practically essential. It's rumored that when the American staple brand KFC prepares its fried chicken, they also use MSG as a flavor enhancer. Due to the aforementioned anti-MSG backlash, Westerners are quite sensitive to the use of MSG, though adding it directly is less common than in Asia. However, food manufacturers aiming to enhance flavor employ a clever workaround to achieve their goals. For example, using hydrolyzed vegetable protein yeast extract and other ingredients rich in free glutamate like natural concentrated broths to achieve the same flavor enhancing effect as MSG. These products don't list MSG on the label, instead they are renamed as natural flavors, yeast extract and so on. But essentially it's the same thing. So given that the whole world uses MSG, Western and Chinese cuisines are in the same boat, prospering together or suffering together. Furthermore, even without adding extra MSG, the amount of glutamate people consume daily from other natural foods far exceeds the tiny amount added to a single meal. Additionally, regarding the question of whether MSG ruins the natural taste of food, we can only say talking about harm while ignoring the dosage is just plain dishonest. While there are indeed some unscrupulous chefs who abuse MSG now. For example, if the ingredients aren't fresh, they add MSG. If the cooking isn't quite right, fine, they add MSG. It is often used to mask a dish's imperfections. Yet when used in moderation, much like adding salt, it enhances food flavors, merely adding to the appeal without ever overpowering the main ingredients. This has been repeatedly proven in culinary practice. Therefore, even in milder dishes, MSG does not compromise the food's original taste. Moreover, when we set aside rumors and prejudices, we discover that MSG can fulfill many essential needs. It is an extremely affordable way to enhance flavor. A tiny amount is enough to produce a significant umami boost. This is deeply significant for those with limited financial means. In times of food scarcity or high costs, and people couldn't afford meat or fresh ingredients, MSG helped bridge that gap to some extent. This characteristic has made MSG popular in developing countries, often referred to as the poor man's broth. Likewise, in the food service industry, chefs use MSG to reduce the time and cost of preparing stocks, ensuring a consistent umami flavor in their dishes. This is highly beneficial for large-scale catering. Additionally, MSG is actually a low-sodium seasoning, providing sufficient savory depth with just a small amount. Studies estimate that if some table salt is replaced with MSG, overall sodium intake can be reduced by about 8%. And while this may seem modest, it represents a significant improvement for public health. So as we look back over the past few decades, we see that ingredients like MSG, which suffer unjust stigmatization out of the blue, along with other familiar friends like soy sauce and GMOS. Therefore, what truly fuels such panic is not just the negative public sentiment, but rather the blind fear of those who lack rational and scientific thinking. Rather than shunning MSG, let's respect it and use it in moderation to add a dash of umami to our lives with a little less prejudice. Perhaps that is the true lesson it offers us.